What if everything you thought and believed about successful buying, selling, and financing your home was wrong? Welcome to HomeWise with Miget. This is where you can count on straightforward, objective advice on the right way to make the most out of every dollar you put into your home. Whether it's buying, selling, or financing, even maintaining and growing its value along the way. Coming to you from the News Talk STL studios at Union Station in St. Louis.
Welcome to HomeWise. I'm Stal Ponticus with the host of the show, Michael Miget. And if this is your first time joining us, we're glad you're here. Welcome aboard. And Michael, good to see you, buddy. How are you?
Hey, I'm good, Stal. How are you?
Doing fine, thanks.
So this is going to be what amounts to the third installment in the introduction of the private banking system. So we've talked about the first two rules. And I will recap those in a minute. But today we're going to talk about the third rule, which is the velocity of money. Okay. And it holds the key to, avoiding what amounts to the stagnation of your most valuable piece of the puzzle when it comes to your personal financial picture. Since we need to go back to kind of rehash the beginning of this. Okay. So remember back to where we started when we were laying out the framework for the private banking system. You know, the goal is basically just to make better use of your scarce resources like your money, your capital, the things that you have of value. Conventional wisdom tends to lead us to essentially squander those things. All right. So just real simply put, spend money where you don't have to spend money because we're conditioned to spend money because we think that's the only way to get something. And we've actually been conditioned to think that spending money is a good thing so that we don't take on debt. And although that might make sense within that micro, vision of that particular situation, you take a step back and look at your financial picture as a whole, it's not always the best decision. It depends on what's the thing you're buying. Is it a consumable or does it have any value to it? What does that look like over time? What type of financing is available to that? And what is your financial goal with that purchase or the spending, of that money? So in that little kind of interlude there, we referred to rule number one, which was keep your capital. Okay. Preserve your money. Don't spend. As an alternative to that, collateralize, right? So if we look at it in terms of buying a car, for example, don't spend your money, right? People would think that, well, if I had the money to just write one check, I would just go buy the car. Then I don't have a car payment, right? Because nobody wants a car payment. Like they hate car payments almost as much as they hate house payments, right? Although we're conditioned to take out a loan to buy a home because that's the only way that we can do it. But even people who have the wherewithal to write one check to buy a house will tend to do that because I don't want the mortgage, because I don't want the monthly payment. I don't want that weight on my shoulder, the monkey on your back.
For 15 to 30 years.
Forever. Right. It just seems like it feels bad. And there's an emotional detachment from that, fueled by the emotional attachment to the thing, to the thing that they're buying. So with real estate, it's sort of baked into the equation. We already get it. We don't do it for necessarily the right reason, but because of the way the system is set up, we end up doing the right thing. Okay. At least, in general. Right. But for things like cars, for things that are, other things that we buy that might be collateralizable, we would tend to pay cash if we're able to pay cash. All right. So the idea is don't spend your money. You're able to collateralize it. That leads to rule number 2, which was last week, which was finance efficiently. Okay. how well you can finance, how efficiently you can finance will affect your decision whether or not you're going to collateralize to buy the thing that you're buying. All right. So it's not just an easy, well, okay, we would always borrow instead of spend cash. All right. Because it matters how much the thing is. It matters what kind of financing we can get on it. Is it good financing or is it not so good financing? Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's the thing that we're trying to finance and it just isn't good financing on it. Sometimes it's the resources that we have available and we don't have any other choice than to finance or take, or take bad financing. But it opens the idea to the financing doesn't necessarily have to be directly connected to the thing. All right. So just let me give you a quick example. An RV. You go out and like people that are into RVs love their RVs, right? Sounds like a pretty cool thing. I've never done it before, but it seems like it would be a neat thing. RVs, you're not going to go get a 4 or 5% loan on an RV. From best I could tell, RV loans are upwards of 9, 10, 12% or whatever. These were credit unions, like, places where you would normally go to, like, if there's going to be a good one, this is this is where it would be. So, boats are going to be similar to that. And even cars are like that to some extent, once you get out of the subsidized dealer financing things. Just because you're buying that and the loan they're offering that's directly tied to the asset that you're buying isn't so great. You might have other capital to use as collateral to get a better loan, right? So just real simple example. We haven't talked about it before, but I'll throw it out there as another option to expand our level of thinking here. There's a thing called a securities-based line of credit. Basically, if you have stocks and bonds in an investment portfolio that has a value to it, you could get a loan that is collateralized by that asset, by those assets as a whole. All right. And then you could take that money and you could use it for whatever you want. Okay. Now, I'm not talking about a margin loan. Certainly not talking about buying more stocks on margin, right? That's a whole nother thing. This type of loan, actually, when you take it out, you're signing something that says you're not going to buy stocks and bonds with it. Because if you do, it becomes a different kind of loan, margin loan. There's different rules and regs that are associated with that. So you have to use it for something that's not tied to an investment or whatever, like, in our case, buying an RV. You can get a better deal on a securities-based line of credit than you can an RV loan. All right. So if you're going to do that, right, so you have one loan might be, the RV loan might be 13% and the securities-based line of credit might be 8%. Okay. Well, those are two wildly different financing efficiency situations or scenarios. You might come to a different decision on what you buy, how much you're going to buy, how much of it you want to finance. Because remember, you don't even have to finance the whole thing. It could be, you could put half down, borrow the other half. It just depends on what makes sense. So it's not one size fits all. It's dynamic. It moves. It molds itself to the situation that you're applying it to. I'm trying to outline rules or sort of like guide rails for how to look at this. So we talked about what an efficient loan looks like. It's controlling large sums of money for relatively small amounts of monthly money. If we're talking about a loan, all right? That's where the miracle of the 30-year mortgage came in, right? So I said mortgage was one of the most efficient kinds of loans that you can get. It's long-term. It's a fixed rate loan. Your cost is locked in over a long period of time. So the payments are made lower, affordable. You can borrow larger sums of money, such as for a house, right? So when I say mortgage, your mind just goes to someplace. It just makes total perfect sense. right? But if we strip off the word mortgage and we just call it a loan or we call it financing, it could be for any purpose, anything that you want to do with it. All the same rules apply, okay? We're trying to get control of a sum of money, and what is it going to cost us to do that? Is it cheaper to use someone else's capital in the case of borrowing a loan, or is it cheaper to use our own capital, right? The core foundational idea of this is, how do you value your own capital, its growth power? That's where people mess up. Almost to the, if they even try to figure out what that number is, they mess up. All right. But my thought is that it never even comes to that. That question never gets asked because nobody says, well, before they write that check and pay for to pay for, or buy the thing, they don't run through this idea of like, okay, well, I'm taking money out of something and I'm going to, because you're investing, they don't use that word, they say buy. We're going to invest this money into this other thing. What am I losing? What am I gaining? And how does that change my whole financial picture? Because when people are buying houses, and it happens all the time. Oh, we're going to liquidate stocks to buy this house. Like, okay. All right. Look, it's not a terrible idea, right? It's not going to throw you into bankruptcy. Nothing bad is going to happen to you. But as far as a financial decision to make, it's probably a loser over the long term, because we would expect the stocks to go up. We expect the value of the home to go up too. But I think that the value of the home is going to go up at a reduced pace than to what we would expect the stocks to do, which is why you're told to invest in 401k for your retirement. It's the only way you'll be able to retire. You got to put money into 401k. Employee, like everybody wants you to do that is financial advice. By the way, nobody ever went to jail for telling you to sell stocks to buy a house. So now if you buy a house, you pay cash and then you go take a loan out and then you try and invest some money, you go to jail for that. It's the same damn thing, right? But it just depends on perspective, and it depends on the questions that you ask and how you look at it. This is all an exercise, and this is a framework to take the things we've already been talking about and to put them in new light, all right? To relabel things and all of that. So when we jump in here, rule number 3, velocity of money. Well, what the heck is that, all right? Okay, so velocity of money in a generic sense is just the speed at which money moves around an economy, okay? A stagnated economy, money is stuck. It tends to sit, right? So if banks aren't lending, money is stuck in the bank. If people are saving, the money is stuck in their savings accounts, sitting in the bank. And, companies aren't borrowing because they don't feel like they have the revenues to pay for the financing for the loans that they're trying to do. And so this interconnected economy world, and now it's a global economy, the degree to which money is able to move and flow affects how successful it is.
That would be stagflation, wouldn't it?
That is part of it. Okay. I use the word stagnation.
Okay.
So it's sort of they're related, all right, but it's not directly exactly the same, the same thing. Let's say the pandemic, right? So whenever things look like they're slowing down, the Fed comes out and does something to essentially inject money into
stimulate the economy,
right? Whether they're either stimulating banks to lend by reducing rates, they're stimulating people to borrow by reducing rates. That's code for where we are reducing the hurdle that you're going to evaluate whether or not you're going to borrow or spend. And what I'm trying to do is, you're not spending. I'm going to try and get you to spend more. I'm going to lower that hurdle. We're going to reduce the value of your savings. We're going to literally force that money out of your account, right? Now, not everybody, it doesn't, I mean, nobody says, oh, the rates are too low, I got to go. It doesn't become, it's not like a conscious thing, but what happens is the Fed doesn't do something to get you to do something or me to do something. They do things to get massive like sectors to do things, mainly corporations. And so corporations, they all got accountants sitting around figuring out this question of like, do we spend or do we borrow? By the way, companies don't spend, they always borrow. They finance operations out of lines of credit. Okay. They take income and they invest it. Where do they invest it? They invest it back into their business. Why? Because that's where they get the highest rate of return. They can get a better ROI on all that incoming money by reinvesting it back into the company and then borrowing, because they can borrow cheaper than what their internal rate of return. That's why companies track what is our internal, like, what do our numbers look like? What do our metrics look like? And if we're not growing fast enough, if we're not turning money fast enough, if we're not doing those things fast enough, we're going to die. Because if you're standing still, you're really going backwards. So all of those things are related, but we need to relate this back to a personal economy, right? Because in a personal economy, it's not quite, it's actually a lot simpler than that. Okay. Because we don't have that much going on. I mean, there might be a lot going on, but it's all in like just a couple of different categories. You got your inflows, you got your outflows. That's about it. Most people's only inflow is their income. And then their outflows are things like bills and debt payments. All right. Now they might have a bunch of bills and you might have a bunch of debt payments, but it's all in one category. And they tend to all be the same treatment of the same. The debt payments are going to be a little different, but we're going to talk about that, here in a minute. What you have is income coming in, you have spending going out, and then what's left over is your net income, your disposable income. I've called that margin in the past, all right? Not directly in this case, but essentially, remember, definition of margin is difference between what you make and what you spend, all right? So that word expands beyond just he said margin, that's what we add to the payment in a debt elimination plan created by debt consolidation to make the thing pay down, right? Well, that margin comes from a difference between two numbers. It's between what you're making and what you're spending. It's like extra capital there. So the consolidation goes to create that capital, right? Velocity. Got to give you something to move, okay? But there's that, but then there's also this income coming in. And so when the money comes in and then you spend it, and then what's left over, spend less than you make, what's left over, it sits in the account. Now, we talked about this before. What happens to money, sitting money? What happens to it?
Winds up getting spent.
It evaporates.
Yeah, disappears.
Because we spend it, okay? Well, it evaporates for two reasons, actually. First off, we might spend it, but let's say we don't spend it,
okay,
right? But it's still there. The rest of it's going to get inflated away because it's probably sitting in a checking account, a current account that has 0.nothing%, so there's no growth. And then we're in a 4 to 5% inflation environment. Realistically, we're probably in a worse inflation environment than that because this money that we're talking about, it's mainly like we're going to buy food first. We're going to buy, pay taxes with it. We're doing all these other things. Insurance has gone up 20% this year. Taxes have gone up 20% this year. Food, meat, poultry, eggs, butter, like bread, like all the stuff that we consume on a regular basis is all going up crazy through the roof.
So it's more like 10 to 12% as opposed to 3 to 4%.
Well, on an average across a bunch of things, it very well could be for that. That figure is going to be different for everybody because everybody buys a little different things. But the point that I'm getting at is that the things in the economy that go to offset that, things like, if you buy a computer, it used to be to get a decent computer or to get like the top of the line computer, you needed to spend $4,000 or $5,000. Well, I can go out and get a near top of the line computer for $1,000. The price on computers has really come down. It may not seem like it, but the price of cell phones has come down. The price of television programming has come down. The price on a lot of other things that we buy has come down. The problem is we don't consume those to the same degree that we consume the other things. So we've got more, that's velocity. That's an example of velocity. We've got more activity happening over here in one place where it matters more to us. So there's a weighting toward that other thing. So that's why the government comes out and says, oh, well, inflation is X, right? I don't really care. I mean, I care because I know they're going to make a decision based on it, and that's what a big group of something is doing. But as far as me as an individual, it doesn't matter. So when we get into this, evaporation is the result of income that has stagnated in your account. Okay. It happens to everybody. Everybody does it. I see it every day because people come in, they got big fat savings accounts, and that's great. Congratulations. That is great. You have the skill. You have a skill that I cannot teach you. I cannot teach you how to save. It's inborn, it's genetic, or, I mean, you can learn it, but you don't people just don't become spenders versus savers overnight by chance. You know, I mean, it's it's a lifestyle, right? It doesn't mean it's the right optimum thing to do, but it's better than spending it, right? Because it will inflate away and erode away slower than if you spent it, which is why spend was 1, erode away was 2. But we're going to dig in to this more in the second segment. I know we need to go to break, and when we come back, we'll dig in more.
We'll take a quick break here. Thanks for joining us for HomeWise. That's Michael Miget. I'm Stal Ponticus. Glad that you're along, and we will be right back with more of HomeWise. Welcome back to HomeWise. I'm Stal Ponticus with the host of the show, Michael Miget. We're in the middle of our intense conversation here on the velocity of money, so get back into it, Michael.
I know he's a real barn burner this week, let me tell you.
Interesting stuff.
And it sounds so dry. It sounds so dry. Like, if the title of the book, right, The Velocity of Money, like, I would probably gravitate to that, but the other 99.99% of the population out there or more,
I would be intrigued by it.
Wouldn't.
Yeah, a velocity of money. Okay.
Well, it takes more than just curiosity to actually digest this. But it's important because it affects everybody. It's just everybody doesn't realize that it's affecting it. So at the beginning of the first segment, I kind of let the cat out of the bag. I have said something, all right? But getting back to that thought, that income left over in the account after you've done the spending, right? So everybody has it. So you spend less than you make. What's left over is disposable income. It's margin. It sits in the account. It's stagnating. If you are willing to reimagine the flow of your money, okay, and do something a little bit outside the box, now nothing risky, nothing exotic, nothing crazy. It might sound a little crazy or weird at first, but if you're willing to embrace it, there's the possibility that you would add an entirely new layer of benefit to your personal financial economy. All right. By getting velocity out of somewhere where you don't have it right now. All right. So the key is, how do you keep that money from stagnating in the bank account? All right. In order to do something, in order to keep it from stagnating, you got to do something with it, right? So highest and best use. It always comes back to highest and best use, okay? Is the highest and best use of your money to be sitting in a checking account earning 0%? No. Why? Because it runs a risk of being spent, okay? But even if it doesn't get spent, it will erode away over time. Okay, because theoretically, now I know people are like, oh, no, I got to leave it there because I might need it. All right. This assumes that you're going to get paid again next month.
Mm-hmm.
And so when next month's bills come, you've got yourself on a cycle, where you get paid and then you spend and then you get paid and then you spend. And so people get into a rhythm and a flow of all of that. I cannot mimic that flow for this. You have to kind of fit this into however your like flow goes. All right. I mean, in my house, I have a flow. I know what it is. It's not uncomplicated. It's probably overly complicated just because I haven't like sat down and reworked it in a while. So what happens over time is, some things expand, other things contract, and
Mm-hmm.
little like, oh, here, we're just going to do this to get by for this month. But then that month becomes a year. Like, and we're still doing that goofy thing. Like, oh, don't forget to stick this thing over here so I can pay that other bill. It gets paid out of this other account. Well, like, why is it still over there? Like, in fact, why do we even still have that thing? Like cancel. But it happens, and you get too many things going around, and it overly complicates a personal economy. So it makes it harder to track this stuff. But in order to keep that money from stagnating, you have to do something with it. You have to move it. That requires action. There is a benefit that's stored inside that leftover money that you're losing. All right. So our goal is to capture that. Now, a few weeks back, I talked about Dave Ramsey. He wouldn't, I'll just tell you right now, he would not approve of this. Okay. If anything outside the box, he wouldn't approve of. And he's not wrong. Okay. If this is wrong for you, then you shouldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be the first person to tell you that. All right. But, and he would cite human nature, things like that. People, if they have to do something in order to get the benefit, what happens if they don't get the benefit? Well, we're always going to make the assumption that they're not going to do something, so let's protect them. Let's not give them the opportunity to bust out of the mold, bust out of the box, and grow.
Mm-hmm.
Let's protect them, right? Because that's the world that we live in today. But what if you didn't have to do that? What if you didn't, in order to get that benefit, what if you didn't have to do anything? What if it just came automatically? All right. And not only that, but you set it up to automatically harness not just the difference between what you make and what you spend, but what if you could harness the entire amount that you earned? Okay. So not just the difference, that little small difference, but the entire amount that you earn. So let that sink in for a minute. It will be easiest if I illustrate this to you through an example. All right. So I'm going to go back to the old debt consolidation example because it's easy. People get it. Right. And it also illustrates all these different, it's why it works. Okay. No one will ever show it to you this way, but any opponents to debt consolidation don't understand it this way. Why is it so powerful? It has the power to move mountains, but it's not a solution. It's a tool. Okay. At best, it's a partial solution. It gets you into the game. It gets you on the field. It doesn't get you into the end zone. If you don't get in the end zone, you're going to get tackled. You're going to get tackled and end up punting. And then you're like, oh, it doesn't work. That's terrible.
Then you're on defense.
Don't do that again. Right. Oh, no, stay away from that. We're just going to eat beans and weenies. Right. That can be part of the solution. And if you're able to do that, you should. Okay. But you have the ability, you have the opportunity to do something else because you have income and you are wasting most of it. You're wasting it by it sitting in an account, risking getting spent. So you may make more than you spend. Then people will spend our bills, what our bills are. We have some leftover money. What do we do with it? Oh, we got to keep it. We got to preserve it. It's rule number 1, right? Well, yeah, but no. Preserve it to protect it. It's going to erode away. But what if I need it? And then what happens is needs expand to meet resources. So, maybe you had $1,000 left over a month. Oh my gosh, I don't have $1,000 left over. Well, if you tried, you might. Right? If you have 500 left over, I'm sure there's another 500 of waste somewhere. And so after you do the beans and weenies scrimp and save thing, you'd wind up with 1,000, and now you got $1,000 to do with something. Oh, but I got to protect it here. Oh, well, little Johnny needs something or this or that or the other, or, oh, the TV was on sale, or something else that wasn't like earth pressing, and now you don't have the 1,000 anymore. It's, well, it's coming again next month. But see, next month it's a new thing. Like, right, tomorrow is always tomorrow. It's never today. The day after today is always tomorrow. We never get to tomorrow, right?
So you're eating more mac and cheese.
Exactly. Well, and that helps, but there might actually be a long-term detriment to that because your medical bills later on might go up. So you're actually not saving money, but see, this is pervasive through just about everything. I mean, I could argue it as being like a universal law of the nature here almost, but let's get back to the debt consolidation example before we get too far off on that tangent. So rule number 1 is protect your capital. You're using home equity as a store of capital. All right. Collateralize that using a home equity line of credit to obtain funds, someone else's funds, not your funds, but you use your funds to get those other funds. Why? Because those funds are cheaper than spending my own funds. Because in order to get those funds, I got to sell the house. Well, that's expensive. I mean, not just on paper, but I know I don't have a place to live, and somebody has to always live somewhere. So then I would be paying okay, see, so that starts you off. That's no good. See, so we get this. That's why this is a good example to start with. I don't have to convince you that, hey, there's this thing called a HELOC, and it's a good idea to pay off 24% credit cards with an 8% HELOC or 10% or whatever the percent on the HELOC is. It's half the credit cards, right? I don't have to argue, like, you'll just accept it when I say it, right? But that's really not why it works. I'm going to tell you why it works here in a minute. Collateralize that using the HELOC to obtain funds to pay off the credit cards. That creates margin, okay? Monthly savings. Okay, you're not paying the credit card payments anymore. You're paying the home equity line payment, and you did it. Why? Because it saves me money every month. That difference, that savings is margin. Okay, what I say you have to do with the margin, keep paying the same payment that you were making before you did the consolidation. That's paying yourself back based on the original cash flow, right? The original payments, not the newer reduced payments. Because if we just pay the newer reduced payments, all we did was stretch the debt out. And in the case of the home equity line, the way I've been laying it out with interest-only payments, you have an infinite amount of interest you could pay. So you've got to pay it back. So you stick with that original cash flow margin. That's what creates the acceleration, the prepayment that gets the thing paid off. It's you paying yourself back. So when you do that, you're getting your capital back. Satisfies rule number 1. So protect our capital. Right? We didn't use we didn't spend the capital in the first place, so we didn't have to earn it back. And in situations where we have limited earning power, like in fact, you have limited earning power, whether you realize or not, it's limited to whatever you're getting right now, because you probably don't have the ability to go out and just double your income next month if you needed to. Otherwise, if you do, you're probably already doing it. So you're already operating at whatever optimum level, given whatever you're willing to put towards it, right? So, in that sense, everybody's on a fixed income. You get your capital back, the debt's paid off, and now that future margin, that future difference is yours to keep. Oh my gosh, it just ended up back in the checking account again. What happens with it? So now we got to do something else with it. We'll get to that in a minute. I glossed over something in that example, which is when in that pay yourself back step, okay? You have to take action and pay yourself back. Remember the beginning segment where we talked about you have to take action, right? If you don't, it sits in the account, runs a risk, it evaporates. Well, what if instead of just making the original cash flow payment into the home equity line? Okay, so we're still in the debt consolidation example, and I'm saying pay the original credit card payments in against the debt. That represents the minimum payment on the home equity line plus a margin payment, which is the pay down. What if instead of doing that, you just took your entire paycheck and put it against the home equity line? It would pay down faster, wouldn't it? You're putting all your income into the home equity line as soon as it comes in, right? So let's say it comes into your checking account and you auto draft it, sweep it, whatever you want to call it, over to the home equity line. right? So if you make, let's say you make $10,000 net per month, these are just round numbers. You get paid twice a month, so that's $5,000 per paycheck. You take that entire $5,000 and you pay it down on the home equity line, right? Instead of the $200, $300, or $400 that you were doing, you have like an extra big chunk of payment there. And then 2 weeks later, you're going to have the next $5,000, and 2 weeks later, you have the next $5,000, and so on and so forth. Okay. You're immediately putting all of your income to work, paying down debt. That's a good thing. There's return on investment to that. Okay. Well, that sounds great, Mike, but what about my bills?
How are you going to live?
Well, right. How am I going to live? Okay. And what about that payment that I'm supposed to make to myself?
Mm-hmm.
Right. The payment that you're supposed to be making into the home equity line, right? You had me do something. And besides, it's like, I've never heard that before. That's weird. Mike, that's weird. I will grant you that it is weird. It is outside the box thinking. It's probably new. It's different. It's extremely uncomfortable. I get it. All right. If there wasn't a big benefit to get out of it, I wouldn't even bring it up. Okay. By the way, you don't have to do this to be financially successful, but it helps get you there. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So remember, with some of this, we're trying to create speed. And one of the things I said with paying off debt, paying off like consolidation, is the faster you can eliminate it, the better chance you have of getting to where you're going. All right. So let me complete this thought. All right. When a bill comes due, so normally the money would go in your checking account and it would sit there and it would wait to get spent. And some of it goes in and comes straight back out, but then some of it sits for a few days and comes out, and then another chunk sits for a few more days and comes out. Maybe some of it sits there for a couple of weeks and then comes out. And then there's this chunk left over that never comes out because it's the difference, or it doesn't have to come out, right? It's the difference between what you make and what you spend. All right. So we are still capturing that number. But in the meantime, we captured the benefit of all of the rest of the income. Okay. So you actually automatically capture both of the amounts. All right. So papers are sticking together. So you put all your money in, and then you would spend what you normally would on your bills, right? Because a home equity line is two ways. It actually functions a lot like a checking account, right? So you can put in, you can take out, you can put in, you can take out. Just like a checking account, you can put in, you can take out, you can put in, you can take out. Credit card, you can charge on it, pay it back, charge on it, pay it back. We use different terminology with these things, but functionally behind the scenes, they're very similar. You have one account and it's going up and down in value. You are using it as a tool. You're creating velocity there. All right. So as long as you spend less than you make, the difference always stays deposited or paid against the outstanding balance in the HELOC, or think of that as like the net payment made. All right. This achieves velocity of all of your income. So it's the maximum velocity that you can get, right? You get, and it also, what it does is it makes that payment or that capture of the difference between what you make and what you spend automatic, but it also captures the changing nature of what that number is every month, right? Because you might make the exact same amount of money every month, but you don't spend the exact same amount of money every month. Right? I mean, to the dollar, you don't, because some of your spending is discretionary and sometimes you have it and sometimes you don't. And so what happens is you get down to the end of the month and like you have some money left over and like, okay, it's time to make that payment. And so you make that payment. But you're like, well, I mean, if you have $1,000 left over, are you really going to put $1,000 towards that debt? Most people won't. Why? Because, well, what if I need the money? I don't want to be in no money. I'll be broke. I can't spend all the money, even though you wind up spending all the money. I won't consciously on purpose spend all the money because I might need the money to spend. It's a circular argument there. Okay. There's some humor in there that I'm not capturing at the moment. The point is, it's very difficult to get somebody. If you make 10, you spend 9, you've got 1 left over, you've got debt over here. And maybe the debt elimination plan says to throw, like that actually that $1,000 left over is probably net of that plan. Nobody takes 1,000 and puts it against the thing. All right. At best, they will, how about half? I'll put 500 against it and I'll keep 500. Better than not putting anything against it, but you losing the value, the stored benefit in that second 500. If you do it this way, where you put all of the income in and then spend the money out, whatever income net you have while it's yours, so you're even getting benefit from money waiting to be spent, okay, is sitting there against the balance in the home equity line, reducing its balance or remaining paid against the debt. If you don't spend the money, then it just stays. If you do need the money, so I got to say, I might need the money, it's there in case you need it. But it also creates that built-in hurdle rate, which is, okay, it's time to buy that thing. Oh, that TV, it's on sale. Best Buy, I've been waiting for it. It's $800. It's a great deal. It's a $3,000 TV. It's only $800. I got $1,000. Do I really want to borrow on my home equity line to go buy a TV? Okay. So it has that additional mental idea in there. And besides, you're going to be paying 8% on the money. Now you saved 8% on what you pay down because the money that you're using is money that you just put in the form of income. Now it becomes called a payment and the balance goes down. But it's just like if you put it into the checking account and then moved it out. The difference is, while the money is sitting in your checking account waiting to get spent, and what gets left over and doesn't get spent at all, assuming that you don't spend it at all, the bank gets the benefit of that because they pay you 0 interest. Meanwhile, they've taken that money, put it to work somewhere else to earn money on it. This way, when you take that money in, you're immediately putting it to work without even thinking about it. All right. And then as I need it, I'll go get it and I'll take it out of work. Right. And then I'll use it for whatever I have to do. By the way, it's a great illustration of taking money from doing something that you're getting a benefit for and then spending something. I mean, it kind of makes you reevaluate what you're spending your money on. So there is an emotional, mental piece to it, but I'm just focusing on the financial piece of that functional use, tactical use of where the money is. So I like that because it adds a layer that normally isn't there. Most people are just put it in a checking account, spend it, what's left over. Maybe we'll move it to a savings account. Maybe we'll move it to our investment account or whatever like that. But does it get moved? Maybe. Does it all get moved? Probably not. Does it get moved on time? No, because it's just haphazard. I do it once a month. I do it once every 3 months. Some people never do it. It's just all over the board. You can forget all of that and just do it this way and have it happen organically if you do it the way that I just laid out. So that's a tactical power move, powerful concept that normally is not present in most people's financial picture. So,
okay.
Let's
good spot to take a break.
Yep. Go to break and then we'll wrap this up.
All righty. We'll take a quick break here. You're listening to HomeWise. That's Michael Miget. I'm Stal Ponticus. Glad you're along for the show this week, and we will be right back with more of HomeWise right after this break. Welcome back to HomeWise. I'm Stal Ponticus with the host of the show, Michael Miget. Glad that you're along. And let's get back into the discussion, Michael.
All right. We are in the home stretch
of
the velocity of money. It's moving fast now, let me tell you. Well, I'm speeding it up for you.
Okay.
And in the last segment, I did the best I could to verbally explain to you this concept. Normally it gets showed on paper. right? So it's much easier to kind of wrap your mind around where you can draw some pictures and flow the money around in a flow chart and all those kinds of things. But really, all I did, well, it's a new concept. It's outside the box. I mean, it's not new like we just invented it or anything, but it's probably new to you if you haven't heard of it before. Essentially using your home equity line like you would a checking account. Okay. Sort of. Okay. You're finding something to do with your money instead of putting it into a checking account, letting it sit, and you getting nothing in return for that other than liquidity, right? Other than usability, accessibility, right? Because having access to it is important because we need some of it now. We don't need all of it. We don't know exactly how much of it we're going to need because our spending varies from month to month. I mean, if for no other reason, some months have 30 days, other months have 31 days. There's that one pesky month that has 28, but sometimes 29. And we're still trying to figure out why that. I know why it is, but go walk up to 100 people on the street and ask them, see what they say. I've always wanted to do that. I see that's like one of the oldest radio or TV things, like go up, like ask them who the president, walk up to 100 people on the street and ask them who the president is. Or, ask them like, what's 2 times 2 or. And
how did February wind up with
you get?
Yes.
Right.
How did February get fewer days?
It's more like what? Well, okay, why February?
Yeah.
I mean, why doesn't like April have 31 days? I just stick an extra day on there, or 31 month, 32 days. Well, it's nice for the people that were born on February 29th.
Yeah, it is.
They're 1/4 their.
Yep.
Was it every 4 years? That's
pretty much. So yeah, when you're 48 and you can say you're 12.
Yeah.
I just turned 12.
Yep. I don't know. You like this administration wants to, they're talking about putting something in the atmosphere to block out the sun.
Yes.
So that we don't heat up.
Yeah.
Like
brilliant.
I can't think of a worse idea.
Yeah.
I cannot think of a worse idea than that.
Yeah. Meanwhile, we'll try to improve ourselves on solar energy, but we're going to try to block the sun.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it makes about as much. It's just incredibly dangerous. I mean, like, think about it. Like, what if they could pull it off?
Oh my goodness.
Like, well, how much do you block?
Oh my.
For how long? And what's going to be the effect of that? Like, you're like, the things, you're talking about. And so like, why even bring this up? Well, it's fun to talk about, right? Because what we're talking about is not necessarily all that fun for you. I'm having a blast, but I understand. But it's the way that outside influences affect an ecosystem, right? It's not much unlike what the Fed does when they inject a bunch of money into our economy and things start going, like going crazy. We get, money moving, like it creates velocity, right? So that's kind of like what we're talking about here. Blocking out the sun, that's like reducing velocity, right? By the way, very dangerous. All things that can be stopped cannot necessarily be started again. That's why what happened with the pandemic was so devastating. Like we turned off the economy. That's the ultimate deacceleration of something. Like the ultimate of it wasn't no velocity, but it was severely reduced velocity to a greater extent than we had ever done before, even more than we had experimented with. We're still in the middle of this grand experiment. But that's just to put more form and function to what we're already talking about. Okay. So I closed out the last segment. We were talking about this idea of velocity money in the context of the debt consolidation example, and explained how that taking of the margin and paying it against the debt and the payments and paying that against the debt and paying yourself back is a form of velocity, right? You're creating velocity there. You're doing that yourself. You're moving money around from one place to another. It's the very definition of velocity that creates a benefit in that case. All right. And then I shared an easy way to do that, which was, scrap the checking account and just use the home equity line put the money straight in, and then spend the money out. Difference between what you make and what you spend will be left over. But in the meantime, while it's waiting to be spent, all of the money that you made, while it isn't needed, is sitting there paying down that balance. You're getting a benefit equal to the interest rate that's on the home equity line. Okay. I understand people will listen to that, and the only thing they will be able to see is, oh my gosh, you want me to pay interest on my bills? I'm like, yeah. Yeah. Because it's less than the opportunity cost that you're experiencing by having the money sit in the checking account earning nothing. We're taking that out of the equation. I'm giving you an upfront benefit in the form of all of your income sitting against the debt, reducing the debt by 8%. So you're picking up a benefit over here. Now, as we spend money, we have to give some of that benefit back, right? There is no free ride here, okay? Well, okay, well, I sort of get that, but I still don't, you just gotta, it's weird. Like, there's gotta be a trick. What's the catch, right? There's no catch to it. The benefit, the money is coming from it. You have to understand that when you put the money into the checking account, okay, just like if you go to a bank and make a deposit, that money is not, the bank doesn't take that money and go put it in a drawer. They don't go put it in a vault. It's not sitting. I mean, I know, like, oh, I brought them cash. I watched them. They put it into the thing and then they marked me down. They remember, like, we used to go to the counter and you could stamp the book.
Your passbook.
Yeah, they have your passbook, right? There's the money right there, right? It was a tangible physical thing. When the bank takes that money in, it's no longer your money. It's their money now, okay?
And
now,
they will practice velocity of money.
They have to. Their business model depends on it. The functioning of the banking system depends on it. That's why we have fractionalized banking system. If they took your money and they just stuck it in the drawer and waited for you to come back in case you wanted it, what pays for the building? Oh, well, see, remember that thing we used to have, account fees. Oh, well, we're going to charge you to have a checking account here. We're going to charge you for all these different things, right? They don't have most of that anymore. Okay. And by the way, those fees aren't enough to pay. The buildings are tall and they're big and they're expensive, and the people and all the employees, all the, and the scandals, they're expensive too. The debacles and all that. Something has to pay for that. Okay. It's a money velocity machine. They take money in, they got to turn around and put it to work. Okay. It's not your money anymore. It's their money. They can put it to work however they want. Government outlines guidelines of what they can and can't do with it. So there's only certain things they can invest in. Okay. There's tiers of capital, and they have to have so much in tier 1, and they can put the rest in tier 2 and then tier 3, and they can invest. So they can't go out and invest in risky things, but they can invest in things like government bonds and other types of, mortgage bonds. They can invest it in life insurance backed by insurance companies that are backed by bonds. And there's other things that are like really super duper safe. That's what they put the money in. And then they use that as collateral. See, this is really an extension of what the bank. So that's why it's a private personal banking system. Not the building, it's what they're doing with the money. We can mimic what they're already doing with the money. So they take the money in, they collateralize it, they put it back out to work, they earn something on it. That's what pays for the whole thing. When you go drop that money off, it's not your money anymore, it's their money. You get basically an IOU. Now, if you come back for it, we'll give it to you. But in the meantime, we're going to use it. And we keep all of that benefit. In exchange for that, they used to pay you interest. Now we're in a new world here where we live in a 0% interest rate world. Value capital apparently has no value to it, which sort of is indicative of part of the problem that we have is we don't know how to value our own capital. So that's really the fundamental kind of theoretical, like, why do we even care about this, right? It helps us answer that question when somebody comes in and says, well, how much money should I put down on here? Do I really want to put that down? Maybe I should put down more. I can get a better rate. Should I pay point? Should I do whatever? These are all really just use of capital questions. And I got this, it's one answer. It's different answer for everybody, but it's the same thought process for everybody. I'm just taking their situation. I'm running it through this framework that I have, and I'm coming up with ideas on things that they could do. And what I'm looking for is highest and best use. Mm-hmm. So I showed you a debt consolidation example, but it really doesn't matter if you have debt or not. You can do anything. It's a home equity line. We borrowed money on it. Use the money for whatever you want. If you want to buy stock, I'm not telling you to, but you could invest it in an investment that returns something. Sometimes people buy rental properties with it. They buy other things that produce income that then they can use the income to pay for the cost of the financing on it. So they're really just using themselves as a conduit. They're adding velocity in a place where there is no velocity, mobilizing dead, lazy home equity, something that's almost never gets used. Remember, the goal is to pay our house off. Mm-hmm. We're going to pay that house off. Don't want to mortgage it again. Mm-hmm. And you got all that more money sitting there than anywhere else in your financial picture. The key and then you're struggling to get by. You're trying to figure out how you're going to retire. Meanwhile, it's all sitting right there under your nose. Mm. Hidden in a belief that you don't want to touch it. You shouldn't touch it stupidly. You shouldn't squander it. Don't take it and go on a vacation. But if you're going to use it to make more, money is like people, they got friends, take when they hang out by themselves, no good. They get depressed, they wither away, and they kick, right? Send them out into the world, make their friends. You know what? They go meet people. They make friends and they bring those friends back. $1 goes out, brings $2 back. Oh, well, now I had one, now I got two. Let's send the two out. I got kind of
Yeah.
So we'll end it there.
Okay.
A little bit of fun. There's a lot more to this. If you're buying a house, if you're selling a house, if you need advice on something, what do I do? I don't do investment advice, but what do I do with this money kind of, that kind of stuff? Consolidate debt. Call me. Okay. HomeWiseRadio.com. This episode, all kinds of episodes. You've got GoShelter.com for the mortgage website. You can call or text me direct, 314-275-0314.
What's the website, by the way?
HomeWiseRadio.com.
All right. Good. That wraps up this edition of HomeWise. I'm Stal Ponticus. That's Michael Miget. Glad that you joined us for HomeWise, and we will join you again next week and hope you will be with us for another edition of HomeWise.
Loans and loan information provided by Shelter Mortgage, Inc. Visit us at GoShelter.com and MLS number 192609. A Missouri residential mortgage licensee and equal housing lender. Call 888-497-2558 for additional cost information. Other restrictions may apply.